welcome everyone to another fine developer tools community update we will be having today for June. Today we're again going to go over the regular format, going over what happened over the past month, and then we're going to have an open discussion around ABI. Yeah, looking forward to getting some feedback from the community on this interface that we're creating. So yeah, again, at any point have any questions, please drop them in chat, or preferably use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer your questions as promptly as possible. And with that, I will hand it off to Austin Baggio, the product manager of Developer Tools. Is that the official title?
Yeah, you got it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Austin. Take it away.
Cool. I'll jump in. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, as Josh mentioned, we're just going to talk about what we shipped and then dig into the ABI a little bit. And of course, we want feedback. That's why we do these sessions. So please jump in at any point. Jump in the chat, ping us afterwards, come off mute or ask to join so that you can talk live. But without further ado, I'll just start with our vision. It's unchanged: deliver the intuitive, productive, and reliable tools needed for Web3 development. So everything we're doing is to move in this direction. And one massive step that we took this past week in that consensus was our very own Josh Ford, as well as Ben, led a workshop at Consensus. This tweet is pretty cool. It's Brendan Eich, who is the founder, I guess, of JavaScript. The creator. He had like a 10-day mega sprint where he wrote JavaScript in its entirety in 10 days. Pretty crazy. and what's even crazier, a feat to be matched by that, was him introducing the JavaScript SDK Enclave version at Consensus that we just released. So if you missed that, there's a link. Josh, I'm not sure what the best way is to share the link to the Consensus workshop. I think in like 20 days or something, everyone will be able to actually watch that workshop. There's a link to it. I think it's like a placeholder link, right? Like you can't actually like view it yet because Consensus hasn't released it officially. Yeah. So we'll set a reminder to make sure that link gets out to the community. But all the materials available in GitHub that Josh and Ben covered, and it's a really cool workshop where you basically go from nothing to writing a full JavaScript contract, deploying it into the Enclave, interacting with it, and I think I watched the workshop, and it's basically like a coin flip where you're using another contract to determine the output of a coin flip, and then in the contract that you write, it's like appending a score to a user, interacting with a wallet, interacting with Near API JS, and it's an awesome one to send to all your favorite Web2 friends. So we'll definitely push that out as it becomes available. But what I did just want to draw attention to is that what we've been calling the Enclave SDK, or the JSVM version of the SDK, we're pivoting towards actually just the full-blown standalone contract JavaScript SDK, which you can think of it as just like a direct replacement for assembly script, and it behaves exactly like any Rust or current assembly script contract, where it just the build generates a WASM file that you can deploy and interact with the same way that you would any other Rust contract. So that's currently what we're prioritizing, and we're expecting to release that quite soon. And we'll be really loud about that release because we're extremely excited about it. And you'll see a ton of updates to our documentation, examples, etc. Awesome. If there's any questions about the JavaScript SDK, otherwise, I can pass it to Austin.
There was one quick one. Someone asked, will the JSVM or Enclave be deprecated in favor of the standalone version?
Yeah, great question. We're trying to figure that out right now. I don't have a leading hypothesis that it's going to be going away immediately. So if it does go away, it's not going to be like in the very short term. But I would push that to the community to give us feedback of why they would want to, what their use cases are that really rely on the synchronous behavior of the Enclave, the benefits of the really small contract that you're actually deploying, and et cetera. But I would love feedback on that so that we can help make a great decision. But at this current time, we haven't made a clear decision on it. So.
Cool, awesome. And then just one question George had, if we could share a link to the resources. If you just go to near.ai/JavaScript, that has a link to everything JS SDK right now. It's a link tree. It has a link to the presentation that Ben and I created, and then also the repo, quick start, all that good stuff. So yeah, near.ai/JavaScript.
Awesome. Josh, do you mind actually just pasting that right in the chat, and then I'll pass it over to.
Yeah, actually I did. And I believe
great.
you did. I believe you did too just now.
I think maybe I sent it to the wrong group. But anyway.
Hosted panelists. I got you. Yeah. I see. Yeah. I posted it to hosted panelists too. Yeah, I will drop them in the chat. Good call. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, and like we said, we love feedback. So leave it in those. The discussions in the JavaScript SDK repo are pretty active. So just if you do have questions or issues, just please leave them in there. Or you can find our contact through a Discord or anywhere. But otherwise, I think I'll pass it over to other Austin, and he's going to walk through some of the rest of what we've shipped and dig into the ABI.
Yeah, so before I go more in detail about the ABI, we just kind of mentioned before, and we'll give more context to that because I'm sure it's very unclear what that is to most people. I just do want to point out the SDK 4.0 stable release because it was kind of like a long time coming and went without like any sort of large announcement or anything like that. Was just posted to Discord, so maybe people aren't aware of this, but essentially, yeah. So the SDK 4.0 was released. There's a lot of details, and I kind of went over a lot of like the main changes on a previous protocol meeting. But then also there's like a migration document that shares all of the like changes and breaking changes from the previous version. It doesn't go into like a lot of the optimizations, but it goes into like the things that you actually care about as a developer, switching from say version 3.1 or any of the 4.0 pre-releases to the actual like stable 4.0 version. But the key things to mention, like I do want to just provide as much context as I can within this short time, is that there should be no state breaking changes. Like you should just be able to update from 3.1 to 4.0. As long as the migration happens correctly, there will be no issues and no need for any sort of like migration of your contract from the previous version to the new one. It should just be like a cleaner interface, more optimized, and certain bloat cut out here and there. With some other like semantic changes, but yeah, again, nothing should be state breaking. It just some things might change, but everything will be listed within that migration doc that's shared here. So there is a link there, but I think we might want to share it within the chat if other people want to jump in with that. So I can share that link after this, or if someone else wants to jump in and share the link to that. Basically, it's on the Near SDK RS repository. There's like the discussions tab, and then if you see the something's happening with the slides. So if you go to the discussions tab, and then there's just the one for the migration document, and then you can use that for migrating between them. Other key things to note is that the Near SDK SIM is deprecated in favor of workspaces with this stable version. Unfortunately, there is like functionality that can't be updated from Near SDK SIM. So we were hoping it was going to be like a smooth transition where like you can keep the SIM tests, but they're deprecated. But unfortunately, like it just isn't technically possible. So if you do want to be able to switch to, if you do still want to use the SIM test, you can use the last 4.0 pre-release, and that'll work fine. You just won't be able to leverage some of the more optimized cross-contract calls. But yeah, if you do want to switch over, the workspace is updated. But just make sure that when you are updating the SDK, you might need to update your workspaces versions, because the most recent ones will have the changes needed for this, because it does leverage a protocol change that came in, which we've talked about on a previous call. But yeah, hopefully that gives more than enough context. And yeah, as I mentioned, the main changes with the 4.0 is just basically there's optimizations, new features, and cleaner APIs. Like the primary one being like the revamp of cross-contract calls and making them more simple for people to use, but then utilizing gas more efficiently. So we can probably move on to the next slide. Now on to ABI, which is kind of a point that a lot of people might not even be familiar what that is. So let me create some context on what ABI is, and then we'll talk about like what we're building with it and how it can be used. So what an API, what an ABI is basically, in our case, like what we're defining as ABI is a human readable schema that describes the contract interface. So as I mentioned here, like the things that are going to be included with this are, like, if you're writing a contract, it's going to include the function names, the parameters, serialization formats, any other metadata that's, relevant to the contract, so that, if you're viewing the schema, you'd be able to easily identify how to interact with that contract and what exists within it. The idea is that it's going to be generated through SDKs. The primary one that we're obviously targeting right now is the Rust one, because that is the one that we're generating the tools as primary support. But obviously in the future, this can be anything that generates this ABI. And what the benefit with this is that from this schema file, you're able to automatically generate client-side code or any sort of glue code to be able to interact with these contracts. So say you have a front end that wants to interact with the contract, you don't actually have to redefine the interface or understand what the serialization format is. You can just call a function. Same with if you're interacting with a contract through scripts, or if you're interacting through a contract through a cross-contract call, this stuff will just be all done for you. The context for why we're building this is to obviously streamline developer productivity and make sure that velocity is as quick as possible with removing as many bugs as possible. If you the ABI is very similar to, and the reason that we're choosing the ABI name as a tentative name right now, which can change, is the familiarity with Ethereum. Ethereum has the Ethereum ABI, which people might be familiar with, which allows a lot of developer tooling and functionality to be built on top of it. If you've worked with other ecosystems, this name might also be referred to as an IDL, an interface description language. It's basically the same thing. The concept is all very similar, where you basically have some code and you're generating some human readable schema, and then people can do with that schema however they like. Hopefully that provides as much context. I might pause for a second just to. ABI is an acronym for what? So yeah, the acronym that ABI stands for is Application Binary Interface. That acronym is I guess kind of referred to in the classical sense of it describes how you interact with a binary. In this case, the binary notion is a little bit it's a little bit opinionated whether or not you consider a WASM binary or WASM blob a binary, but essentially it is basically defining how you interact with that WASM smart contract. Before, we used to refer to this as an ACI, because we were assuming this would be more intuitive, or a more accurate name of saying it's an application contract interface, but it's basically defining the interface of this contract. But yeah, ABI right now is kind of the name that we're going with, just for familiarity, and it, depends who you ask, might be technically correct, because the WASM, it is a WASM binary at the end of the day. And basically, yeah, the serialization format isn't binary as well. So hopefully that answers that question. And yeah, if there's no other questions, we'll just continue on with the next slide. So yeah, if this is kind of unclear, I do want to make sure that I explain a tangible example, or show how this can actually be used in practice. So the general flow is that someone would generate an ABI from a near SDK-RS contract. So basically, you compile the contract and it'll emit this JSON file, this ABI.json file, or whatever it is named in the future, or whatever someone decides to name it. And what you do with this file is it's connected to, say, some front time at compile time. So it'll generate some near API.js code, which will basically make it so that you can just call a JavaScript function, and it'll do all this stuff underneath, where it basically create the actual RPC call that's being sent to a node, and actually send that with any sort of other context that's required. And as I mentioned before, the main reasons for this is just to remove any sort of bugs with the incorrect interface, and without having to duplicate the interface both on the JavaScript side and on the Rust side. But yeah, the key here is just developer productivity, making sure that developers have as much velocity building with this is kind of the name of the game, and somewhat of a theme within all of ABI is this is the primary goal, is just to make it easier for developers to just do what they want without having to know domain specific knowledge or having to like learn specific concepts that aren't relevant to the application they're actually just building. And some other kind of examples of how this can be used from once the ABI is generated is you say you have another contract that interacts with this, you can automatically generate the cross-contract code generation. So basically removing the need to like redefine an interface, which can be error prone because as you're changing the contract interface, it doesn't automatically connect with this other contract that might be interacting with it. Or say you just want a typed interface to use within end-to-end tests. Like say you're writing workspaces tests, or you have some other workflow to, spin up a node and send transactions to. Making sure that all the types are already connected with your testing workflow just makes it so much easier to just like develop quickly and not have to worry about thinking about like what this interface actually looks like and how you serialize certain things correctly. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So yeah, to kind of to show what this might look like at a very like early stages, we're still very much in like the proof of concept phase and like very early stages. So none of what you're looking at right now is by any means final. And if you see anything or if you have any suggestions of what this should look like, please feel free to share within the chat or, after share within Discord or GitHub or anything like that. But essentially what this example is showing is just like this attribute macro where it's just annotating near ABI, and basically everything within it will be picked up by the macro and basically used to be able to generate what you see on the right, which is actually like the ABI JSON file. So just to give kind of an overview, like obviously all the code within is going to stay the same as it was before. And we're trying to make this as minimal as possible. So this obviously might change. But what the actual format that gets emitted, just to give an idea of what this might look like, is it's going to have an ABI schema version so that these things are versions so that if things change within the actual like schema format, it doesn't just like automatically break whatever tooling you're using. It might have other metadata about the contract. So in this case, it's just like the name of the actual contract that's being built. In this case, just ABI because that was the example. The version, which might be relevant to developers understanding like which version of the contract they're actually interacting with, and then other metadata that's picked up from the actual like cargo toml file that actually built the contract. So in this case, like maybe authors or something else like that. If there's any other metadata that you're interested in, please like share or like share with anyone else, and it would be great to understand what other information would be useful for people to include in this file. But the kind of to walk through some of the other details about it is you're going to have a list of functions. In this case, it's just going to be extremely simple because it's just going to have the one function called add. It's going to give some context about it. Like it isn't a view contract. It isn't an initialization function. And it's just got this one parameter that's named value. That's JSON, and it also returns this U64 as well. So, and then it just basically references the type that's below it, and the bottom has root schema for any more like complicated types, which isn't used in this case. But hopefully this gives like a rough idea of what this might look like in practice, of like going from the actual Rust code that you're already writing to some human readable schema. And then from there, it goes on to the use cases that I talked about before. Yeah, you can move on to the next slide if you want. So yeah, this is kind of where we are kind of turn it to you guys and basically ask, like, this is still very early stages. Like, what are your thoughts and feedback on this? Because we very much want to design a tool that's very easy for people to use. So the main questions that we have for you guys is basically, is ABI an intuitive name for this tool? Like, we're using something based on familiarity, but is there something else that would be more clear what this is doing? What functionality information would you like to see in the schema? Like, as I mentioned, like if you do need other information that would be crucial to your use case specifically, we'd love to hear about it. And also, like, what format would you like to see this data? Right now, we're leveraging some like JSON schema functionality and basically using this, outputting this ABI in JSON format, just because it is the most familiar, most readable, like most commonly used format for a schema. But then also, how do you envision using this tool? Like, what is the actual developer experience that you go through, that you would want to go through to make sure that all your tools are connected, so that you're not doing things, not doing redundant work at any point, and making sure things are as streamlined as possible. Obviously, we're trying to cut down on as many steps as possible, but if you have any thoughts of how you'd like to be using this, yeah, we'd love to hear that. And yeah, just as I mentioned, just share within Discord or GitHub. And now that I've kind of shared some of the context on that, I might just pause, and if anyone has any questions. I know Josh, you came off. Did you have something?
Yeah, there's I just saw one question that it's from Shuff. Will the near ABI macro affect the contract's final WASM code, like increasing the size?
Yeah, not at all.
Okay.
So to give an idea of how this works, this is just something that's compiled outside of WASM. So it's something that's an attribute that's used outside of WASM, and essentially what's being called is when the ABI is being generated, it's calling a function that's only available when it's not compiled to WASM 32. So this in no way will have any effect over the actual like output of the WASM code. In the future, some people might want to include an ABI within the extra metadata within the actual WASM file itself, so that information of that ABI is stored on chain. But there's no requirement that this is the case. By default, this is just like a tool for convenience and developer velocity. It does not affect the final WASM code in any way.
Cool, awesome. I also curious, is this the example you showed was in Rust? Is this just for the Rust SDK, or will it be available for the JavaScript SDK once it's like a standalone for WASM and or assembly script as well?
Yeah, there's no blockers why this couldn't be done in any other language. Obviously, that's on our minds of having this be supported with other SDKs. Just obviously, until we have like a very solid schema format, I think what we're primarily focusing on is the Rust one. But if anyone in the community wanted to build it for any SDK that they wanted to build, there's nothing specific to what we're doing that is limiting from the community from coming in and building whatever ABI generation from however they build their contract right now. But this is kind of the most common use case and kind of the most standard. So that's what we're focusing on until it's stable. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, totally. One comment, they don't find ABI to be very intuitive. They were always curious kind of what it was. They also, was asking or would love to see an automatic creation for like a JavaScript APIs for the contract. So like they could do like an import get status / get set status from interface.js.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we're planning on doing. It's not exactly the import get status and set status. It's more of just like you'll have an object that you can use and call functions on that. But that also could be a pattern to go with, where it's just like individual functions. Again, like this, how this actually looks, we will kind of like get more feedback and provide alternatives for people if they want to have different like patterns for how they actually import and use this and create the code generation. But what you mentioned here is very much what kind of already exists within a proof of concept form, but will be kind of made more easily available to people in the future. But yeah, the ABI naming, obviously naming is the most difficult problem. We're trying, like, that's the ABI is kind of what is naturally like what the name is falling into. But if anyone has any suggestions, we'd absolutely love to hear it.
Naming's the hardest part of development, right?
Absolutely. At least for me. I don't know about you guys.
Cool. Yeah, I don't see any other questions, but again, feel free to continue to post them in the Q&A portion at the bottom, or drop them in chat like some of you have been doing. But yeah, we would be more than happy to answer any questions. And then perhaps what I could do is create a poll or a survey form using like Google Forms from your last slide, and then also attach it to this video when we upload it, and maybe email it out to some of our community members to kind of get some more feedback on some of these items that you proposed. But
sure.
Again,
and one other thing I should have mentioned with previously about the ABI is the person who is leading all of this. His name is Danyar. So if you ever have any thoughts or any suggestions that you want to talk about, he would definitely be the point of contact for if you have any feedback for that. But if you share it in our Discord or anything like that, I'm sure anyone will be able to make that connection. But yeah, Danyar has been leading this ABI effort. But yeah, if there's no other questions or anything like that, we can kind of move on to touching the other parts of this.
Thanks, Austin.
So yeah, like this is less for impact or less feedback from the community, but it just to let everyone know kind of what the other initiatives we're working on. These are kind of just like smaller points, but we do definitely have a focus on like clearing some of the technical debt we have in some of our Rust client libraries or workspaces. So the initiative that Miraculous has been working on our team has been like extracting a lot of the primitives from near core for a more stable Rust client interface, and that's going to make like the actual like Rust, the JSON RPC client more stable, and then also just make it a lot like these types a lot easier. Make these types be a lot easier to be used. And then the other initiative that we've kind of been working on has been improving error handling within Workspaces RS, which has been led by Fong on our team, who I think has been on a previous call. But essentially just improving the error handling within Workspaces RS, because that has been somewhat of a pain point of like errors not being so easy to be used, and being able to like diagnose certain issues that you run into while testing. So those are kind of the other initiatives that are happening. But yeah, definitely less opinionated than the ABI stuff. So I won't go too much in detail about these. That's pretty much it. You want to move to the next slide?
Yeah, awesome. That's it from us so this is a bit of a quicker tools update. And yeah, just reiterating what we've already said a million times, we genuinely love the feedback. So JavaScript SDK, ABI, any of the other projects that the developer tools team takes care of, anything related to near, really, we'll try and route it to the right person, the right group. But you can find us on Discord or just jump into any of those GitHub discussions. So I think that's it from us today. Unless there's any other questions, we'll do the obligatory 8-second awkward wait.
Totally. There was one question earlier that I wanted to get to from Aminu. He was asking about near API PY. So the Python API, asking if there's going to be when the documentation be ready. Is there any more insight on that tool? I'm not sure if that's actually something that this team is working on, or maybe it's like a project of another person from the collective. But yeah, there's that question. And then also last night when I was on Discord, someone was asking me to help them troubleshoot near API Go, and I was like, well, they were sending me syntax. I'm like, oh, where is this from? And I was searching and get them. I'm like, oh, it's from this thing that was created, I think, like a year ago by, again, one of our collective members, probably like a side project or something, but wasn't actively being supported. But yeah, do you guys have any comments on these types of projects?
Yeah, so the Python one was not within our team. I think it was Bowden that was working on this. I'm not actually sure if I can remember correctly, but yeah, I'm not quite sure the status of that. I don't believe it's something that maybe it is something that's being actively worked on. I don't know. Do you guys have any intuition about that?
Yeah, just looking at the code, it looks like 11 days ago there was something pushed to it, and yeah, actually looks like Ilya and Sandy and yeah, a bunch of people from our collective were working on it. But yeah, I don't think this is like a tooling team project that's at least owned by them, but more like probably a community project by some of the core contributors. But yeah, definitely feel free to interact with them and engage with them in their respective repositories. I'm sure they would love the help and support. But yeah, it's not an official a product that the tooling team from Pagoda is working on.
Yeah, and same goes with the Go one that you mentioned. Yeah, it's not directly something that this team is working on, but it's yeah. I wasn't even really aware that was even going on. So that's cool.
And one other question, and I got this at Consensus. People were asking about near API JS, and they're really excited about the JavaScript SDK, but they were like, "Hey, what's going on with near API JS? That's been kind of lagging a little bit." I'm not sure if is it the tooling team owning this library, or do we have any kind of updates on that tool, and what's going to be the future of it?
Yeah, so so loud and clear. The API JS needs a little bit of love. The wallet team actually owns that. Josh under Patrick. What I would stress is just keep pushing hard on those issues. I know that some of them have gotten a little bit stale, but not the direct purview of the tools team, of our team. But I think the pain point is very real. So just acknowledging that and thanking everyone for bearing with us. But I would encourage everyone to create issues and try and help resolve those, so that in the interim, until we can get full dedicated resources to give it the attention it deserves.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for addressing that. Yeah, I know a few of our repos, we have some stale issues and some stale PRs. We're really trying our best to get a handle on those and to dedicate. Yeah, there's so much to do and not enough engineers on our team.
More tools than people.
Right, exactly. We have way more tools than people. So yeah, please bear with us as we're trying to go from this startup to scale up position. And we'll do our best to try to engage and get these PRs and issues resolved in a timely fashion.
Just to be super clear with an ask to the community on that is we can shift priority of what we work on based on feedback we get from the community. So what we work on is a direct reflection of what the community needs. So it's really hard for us to make decisions on what tools to prioritize specifically without having direct feedback from the community. And there's a lot of ways to give that, by being active in the GitHub discussion, showing up to these community sessions, or being as annoying as messaging us directly 4 times a day on specific stuff. I'd very much welcome that. So help us determine priorities so we can make sure to work on the most high value things for our community, and just keep pushing us really hard there so we can make sure to deliver the most value.
Yeah, +1 on that. Cool. We'll give it one a minute just any questions. Total AMA session right now. If you have any questions for the tooling team, anybody on the call. Hey Serhi, I know you joined a little bit ago.
Hey.
We didn't have a formal hello. Serhi did a lot of work on the JavaScript SDK that just got shipped. Super stoked.
Yeah, still working on it.
Still working, yes, of course. Cool.
But or if anyone just has any questions about what's possible with ABI, we definitely have the time and ability to chat about that. So yeah, don't feel afraid to send a message in chat in this last minute. But yeah,
absolutely. Awkward silence. But yeah, it's like you want to give that the time for people to ask questions, and also I feel really awkward just sitting here silently being recorded and blasting it.
Should we just start counting back from 10?
Yeah. We have something coming in. Love to hear more about an idea on how to use ABI in the front end.
Yeah, so maybe this is even something I could touch on because it'd be a good point for feedback. Is the 2 strategies that we're kind of identifying, or the 2 paths that we could go for generating JavaScript code from the ABI is through some runtime, through some JavaScript runtime object, which is somewhat similar if you've used like Web3.js, like their contract interface, where basically you input the actual ABI file as a parameter to a function, and at runtime it'll add on all the methods and functions that you can call with it. This is obviously better for like JavaScript, and like maybe you don't require the extra step to be able to like generate some code, but it does come at a lot of like downsides as well, because then you don't have really the ability to generate like the TypeScript declaration files, which make it a lot easier to use with TypeScript files, or like with TypeScript projects. So you want to actually have like type inference on this stuff. So generally, the path that we're going towards is not really like that, but something that's definitely less done, where we're basically going to be generating JavaScript and TypeScript declarations from the actual ABI to be able to be interacted with. And that way you're able to like see the interface more clearly, and you don't have to like debug things at runtime. It just like kind of makes that whole process more streamlined and less error prone. But yeah, if anyone does have opinions on what this interface should look like, if you've used some tool in the past and been like, hey, I really like this interface, like maybe you've used like TypeChain, or you've used like Web3.js, or however you've used like an ABI within any sort of tooling within Ethereum or any other ecosystem, yeah, please feel free to share that. Like, we're going in a direction that we think has like the most possible functionality. But yeah, if anyone has any opinions on like what this workflow should look like, or what this interface should look like, if you've used a good one in the past, we're more than open to hear it. I'm not sure when
Awesome.
You said you wanted to hear more about the JavaScript usage within ABI in the front end, if that was what you were referring to, but yeah, maybe I can also just share also that from this like code generation, you can also generate UI components from it and be able to like dynamically include UI, or just like generate components based on that ABI that make it a lot simpler to develop on. So like there's tons of possibilities, and people can build so much on top of this that unlocks so many different functionalities. So hopefully that sparks some ideas from people, and yeah, hopefully that answers some of the questions. I was taking that vague question and just kind of running with it in different directions. So hopefully that was helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Austin. Yeah. Again, any question, AMA, total ask away if you have them. Give it another minute before we close early. Likes the idea of generating an object on runtime.
Yeah, that's what currently exists within our like proof of concept. So it's possible that we might support both, but there's obviously like more interface bloat if we do that. Like, it is better if things are more streamlined. But there might be, some way of exposing this so that if people did really want to use that, they'd be able to. Like, it isn't that much overhead to support this, but it might just not be like officially supported. But yeah, definitely very possible, and is what is easily possible. Yeah.
Cool.
I did repeat the question, right, before I started giving that. that
yeah, I actually said the question before.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Sometimes I do that where I just give an answer and I forget to repeat the question for the recording.
Totally. Cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this week on our tooling team update. Again, please feel free to give us some feedback. We'll be posting this on YouTube with links for feedback. We have a feedback, developer feedback channel in Discord under our engineering section. So please feel free to drop any feedback you have there, or directly in the repositories, in the GitHub discussions. Definitely, yeah, makes sense to have those discussions right in the repo directly. But yeah, until then, we will see you next month. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks again, Austin and Serhi, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, Josh.
See ya. Bye, guys.